All right, y'all. This is an article that just came out on July 20th, 2017 and Science Daily. And I'm going to post a link to this article in the description box. This is a different professor. And he is saying that it is not deaths of despair killing white Americans. Okay, he does not believe in that deaths of despair. He's saying that it's more opioids and obesity among white people that's killing them. Now, I have to kind of agree with that. When I go out in public, no defense, I see an awful lot of fat white people more than anyone else. And to be honest with you, I don't even believe their 3 meals a day thing is correct. I believe back when our people were in Africa and also in this country, before they arrived, people just ate to keep the body nourished. You know, that was the important thing to do. These Caucasoids eat entirely too much. You know, I even live next to a Caucasian couple, and both of them are fat. And I'm just telling you, I just see more fat white people than anyone else. Followed by them are the Latinos. There's a lot of fat Latinos walking around too. Y'all seem to be the two groups that are the fattest in the U.S. Drug-related deaths among middle-aged white men increased more than 25-fold. Wow, that is crazy. Between 1980 and 2014, with the bulk of that spike occurring since the mid-1990s, when addictive prescription opioids became broadly available, according to new research. So this is a study published online today in the International Journal of Epidemiology. Also found, contrary to widely reported research findings, suicide and alcohol-related deaths are not to blame for increasing mortality rates among middle-aged whites. The results call into question the recent reports suggesting that what have become known collectively as despair deaths by suicide, alcohol, and drugs are on the rise among white Americans, particularly men, facing a lack of economic opportunity and an increase in chronic pain. So they're saying, based on pain and distress explanation, raising the mortality rate among the white population, he's not quite buying it. Okay. Instead, recent mortality increases have likely been shaped by the U.S. opioid plague. Masters said metabolic disease, including heart disease, obesity, and diabetes, are also playing a key role. After years of declining deaths for such diseases, thanks to new drugs and procedures, the progress has slowed for men and stalled for women, the study found. When it comes down to mortality, we are just starting to see the real health consequences of the obesity plague. And it is a plague. Seriously, the next time y'all go out in public, just look at the amount of fat white people you see. It's a lot of them. Okay? I would say it's probably just as many out of shape ones, probably even more than the ones that are in shape, but they are more out of shape than anybody else. And I'm glad this man is bringing that out, because for many years they tried to imply it was black people, but I'm sorry. I see more black men that are in shape than I do see white men, and that is the truth. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that noticed that. In fact, I'm more likely to see a black man that is in good shape than I am to see a white man that's in good shape when I go out in public. All I see are these fat, slobbery looking men that just look horrible. Master's and graduate students, Andrea Tilstra and Daniel Simon, launched a study in spring 2016 after papers revealed the following years of decline, U.S. mortality rates had begun to inch up among middle-aged white, non-Hispanic men and women. Follow-up studies suggest such increases were disproportionately driven by chronic liver disease, suicide, and overdoses, which some suggest were symptoms of the same underlying epidemic of emotional distress, economic insecurities, and chronic pain. One study published in 2015 in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science referred to despair deaths among a lost generation whose future is less brighter than their parents. But we know that. Many people are not living as well as their parents did because the incomes have dropped dramatically for a lot of the same jobs. The despair death narrative caught fire and has since begun to inform mortality research and media coverage and shape dialogue among policymakers and politicians. Yet our research shows he just feels it's incorrect. He doesn't feel these are deaths of despair as it's been labeled. And again, I don't see how it's deaths of despair for them. When Black people have gone through the highest unemployment rate since we've been here. But that's not considered a despair, but it's a despair when white people go through it. Give me a break. Y'all sound weak. For the new study, he looked at U.S. mortality data from the National Center for Health Statistics, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and the U.S. Census Bureau for U.S. non-Hispanic white men and women ages 25 to 34 and 35 to 54 from 1980 to 2014, while previous research had lumped men and women 10-year age spans and drug, alcohol, and suicide deaths together. Masters and his team disentangled the data sets, looking independently at genders, individual year ages, and distinct causes of death. They also distinguished between period effects, in which shifts in mortality rates were similar among all age groups, and cohort effect, in which the shifts were unique to individuals born in a particular time frame. One glaring pattern emerged among men and women of all ages cohorts studied. Drug-related deaths had skyrocketed. For instance, in 1980, 1.4 per 100,000 men and 1.76 per 100,000 women died from drug overdoses. By 1998, those numbers had climbed to 9.5 for men and 3.6 for women. By 2014, they'd risen to 36.5 to 24 for men and 24.4 for women. Wow. Y'all some real junkies. Woo. Oh man, I'm looking out the window. This is kind of off topic. I'm looking out the window at the sunrise and the sky is very, very pink out here. I don't think I've ever seen it this pink before. Okay. And meanwhile, the researchers found no substantive increases in white men's alcohol-related mortality at any time. Suicide rates did rise slightly between 1999 and 2014 for men and women, but this was due largely to spikes among all age groups during times of economic downturn. So whenever the economy goes bad or they're not working that much, this is when your caucasoid will turn to suicide. That suggests economic insecurities are not isolated to a single lost generation. But look, Black people have been living through economic insecurities from day one. You don't see us killing ourselves. These people can't handle nothing. With drug related mortality rates, it took off around the time when prescription opioids became readily available, and it has kept rising steadily ever since, Master says. The team in yet to be published research has also looked into the number of Black men and women and seen similar patterns of soaring rates of drug abuse across age cohorts since the late 1990s. We have no doubt that times of economic insecurity have severe consequences for a population's health, nor do we doubt that pain and distress can pose serious health problems, the author concluded. Yeah, but you know what Black people do soar in drug abuse since the 90s, but we are still not dying at the same rate as the opioid and heroin and fentanyl. White people are dying. Y'all still outpace everybody in deaths. So I don't want him trying to leave that off. We are not dying at the same rate, period. However, taken together, our findings suggest that it is unlikely that recent trends in U.S. white men and women mortality rates have been driven by a plague of pain and rising distress. Instead, the author points to overprescription and overuse of opioid-based painkillers, heroin use, and okay, I'm just seeing what he has here. An obesogenic environment. So he's saying what their findings were when they went in and did a research was overprescription, misuse of opioids, which we know they're overdosing out here every day, heroin use, and obesity. That's what they find as the leading cause of the white mortality rate in this country. And he did not see all this deaths of despair and what they're talking about. He doesn't believe that's what it is. They hope their paper will encourage policymakers and researchers to explore those drivers and their solutions further. Okay, so this man does not agree with the deaths of despair. So he believes that the biggest killer that's happening to white Americans, and the reason why it's rising higher for them than anyone else, is mainly drugs, obesity, and suicide. So that's what's killing white Americans. Please leave your comments and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. Peace, family.